Chapter 3. I'm sorry, sir, but it's going to be a few days. We had to wire his jaw shut from the damage you did. We're lucky you didn't cause any more harm, the doctor said. Morrison didn't bother to look at the doctor to show his visible disappointment. Very well, he said, bringing up a bruised right hand and waving the doctor off. Just ensure he can talk in the next few days, or he won't be the only man needing wiring in his mouth. The CEO of New Purgatory sounded more aloof than angry, but the beads of sweat that ran down the doctor's neck ensured him the message was the same. As the doctor exited the room, Gaddis entered, clipboard in hand. Morrison could see the man's worried expression off the reflection of the glass. Yes, Officer Pelly? There's been 2 more attacks, sir. Better coordinated than the riots. Morrison half turned his head. The Crusaders? We're not sure. Every team we sent to reinforce the patrols were wiped out. Who else could it be then, Gaddis? Morrison raised his voice an octave. Rioters always leave their bodies and rarely kill our entire platoons, let alone their backup. Where were they targeting? The armory, sir. And there was also an attack outside the airstrip. Morrison finally turned to face Gaddis and went to his seat at the oak desk. There was a large map of New Purgatory that always sat in the drawer of his desk. John Morrison unrolled it and set an empty glass and paperweight on the top ends. The man leaned back in his chair and examined where the attacks had taken place. It's obvious they were casing the security. You said they attacked patrols only? Morrison asked. Yes, sir. Morrison thought for a moment, then went to fill his glass from one of his liquor containers. Put armor around the airstrip and double the guard at the armory. No one gets in without proper security clearance. Do you understand? Yes, sir, I do. Any leads on where they are stationed? No, sir. So far, we haven't found nothing in the slums of Brooklyn or Staten. I can only assume they're hidden within the city. The bounties we placed have yet to turn up any additional information. John Morrison held his drink up to the light and stared at it for a few moments before slugging down half of the glass. Jack Newsom will reveal their location soon enough. Still, I want you to redouble your efforts and raise the bounty again. Any free platoons need to handle the riots. Our soldiers must be able to move laterally through the city in case these pinpoint strikes continue. I understand, sir. Dismissed, officer. Morrison watched the man go and then called up his computer. He gazed through the set of contacts. Though he had usurped a good portion of General Latonelli's army, he was still worried about running short on well-trained soldiers. There were several military installations in the south he had yet to conquer, and of course, he had pull with each government in the world. He scrolled down the list of military commanders in each country, starting with China, and then proceeded to make several phone calls. Alex had 1 beer before he decided to go back upstairs and study the map again. The plan for the next day would be to hit the fueling station while Morrison covered his other assets. He gathered the team around the table and laid out his plans. The team had fresh cuts over the top of old wounds, but they looked ready for more. Alonso's scouts confirmed that our efforts worked. The airstrip and armory are being heavily guarded, but Morrison is diverted away from the fueling station. We should be able to get in and out before the soldiers know we're there. Last thing I want is for them to come down on us by our own explosives, Alex explained. I have some thoughts on that, boss, Tyler replied. We could rig 2 separate explosives. First, we set to any vehicles that are scheduled for refueling. Make it look like a single attack. I don't follow, Ezra spoke up. It is an attack. Why not just blow everything at once and get out before more reinforcements arrive? Tyler looked annoyed by the bounty hunter. Because we want them there. We rig the vehicles to explode, and then infiltrate the fueling station itself and rig that. When more vehicles roll in... Shit, Ty. Not just armor, but soldiers too. The whole damn bunch. Otto sounded impressed. It's a clever idea in theory, Layla said. But how are we supposed to get out before we're swarmed? I'll rig the explosives to give us more time. We'll be at a safe distance away before it goes up. But we'll have to fight our way out. Small price to pay for taking out the reinforcements, Tyler replied. Once they can confirm it's us, that'll throw more soldiers in the mix, Janet added. Who's going in? Me, Ty, Dell, and Layla. We can cover Tyler while he goes to work. Everyone else will work on a way to get around the tanks and guards at the armory and airstrip. Keep your ears to the ground. Alex didn't figure he would hear any objections, but was surprised when Nayala waved to get his attention. I'll have a suggestion, Alex, she said. Go ahead. While this is going on, I believe it's time to handle the groundwork on the tower. Tyler, are your explosives prepared for the foundation of Morrison's building? Nayala asked. Sure. Fitted and everything. I also had an idea for how we'll slow the troops chasing us as we make way up the tower. If we can fit some of my homemade explosives on the elevator shafts, we can keep the Marines on the ground behind us. Damn brilliant idea, Dellen said. I can get Mikhail in the building to set the explosives using my old identity, Nayala said. I would object, Mikhail cut in. Too much time has passed. Your disguise is likely compromised. It won't matter. I'm not going to see Morrison, and he's the only person inside that would recognize me. I'll still have my diamond credentials, so once I'm in, I just need to keep to the shadows, Nayala replied. That's cagey, even for a ranger, Alex said. This is how the rangers operate. I know what I'm doing, and we need to do this to get Mikhail in. Brandon's face was tense. He kept clenching and unclenching his fists. His knuckles were turning white. You look like you have something on your mind, Brandon, Alex noted. The sniper relaxed his hands. Alex wondered if the man even realized the emotions he was showing, or if he even cared. This is about more than placing the explosives. Mikhail could get in and out on his own if he wanted to, Brandon stated. But with my help, it'll make that entry easier, Nayala replied with an edge in her voice. Alex wanted to stop the tension, but instead looked back over at Brandon, as did the rest of the team. Everyone apart from Nayala and Brandon seemed confused by the sniper's objection. You're going to try and get him back, Brandon finally said. The care the sniper had for his lover was shattered in an instant. Nayala caught the hurt she had caused him in his eyes. That feeling tore into her stomach like a serrated blade. Her ruse had made it past everyone except one of the men she had loved. She was torn between the man she loved and that man she thought had loved her for so many of the years they had served together. I have to try, Nayala replied. He did the same for me. He's going to be under heavy guard and likely in an incapacitated state, Dellen chimed in. Even if you manage to find him, he'll only slow you down. This is Morrison's tower we're talking about, Nayala, Otto added. He'll have soldiers on every level, and your bird will be locked down before you can get away. Brandon simply shook his head and turned away from the table. He was weary of trying. All those years he spent getting better for the old man, for her, only to watch them both throw their lives away for nothing. He was done fighting for those who cared nothing for him. There is also a high probability that we will have to take separate routes back to the El Chopper, Ranger Hargraven. I may be unable to aid your escape if you attempt to rescue Captain Newsom, Mikhail added. Nayala cast her disheartened gaze over at Alex, who simply listened. If there's one person sitting at this table who knows what saving Jack's life would be worth, it has to be you, Alex. She was right. Alex knew the old man's value. But more than that, he had grown attached to him. The very man that pulled him off the streets was now suffering for him. He didn't want to feel the guilt knowing Jack would die in some interrogation room. Is it possible that he might break? Alex asked towards the room. Dellen and Otto exchanged glances. Brandon kept his stony expression. He'd sooner bite through his own tongue, Janet answered for them. That made what Alex had to say next that much more difficult. This isn't my decision, Nayala. No matter what I say, I get the feeling you're going to do what you feel you need to do. But if Dell's right, neither of you are going to make it out of there alive. And we need you. Nayala showed no fear. I won't fail. Brandon stood up and made for the exit. He'd had enough. Brandon, Nayala called out. The sniper didn't bother to stop and slammed the door as he left. Alex knew he would have felt the same way if it was Layla doing what Nayala had planned. Leave him be, Alex said. Tommy, you think you can splash the chopper with some paint? Cover up the fact that it was one of Maury's birds? I can give it a shot, I might even be able to scrub its registry if the man gets curious, Tommy replied. Do it. I'll owe you a beer, Alex said. More than that, Tommy replied, getting up from his chair. Just have it sent down. We'll set a date once Tommy's got the paint finished. Get some rest, enjoy the bar, but don't go out into the streets without a weapon. I got a feeling martial law's about to kick in again. After the meeting, Dellen went to go find Brandon. While the others were sure he had likely gone down to the bar, the old medic knew better. Dellen made for the roof of Alonso's, where he found the sniper sitting on the ledge with his legs hanging over the side of the building. He was puffing one of his cigars. Some things you just can't force, kid, the doctor said. He was certain Brandon had heard him, but there was no reply. The two sat there for some time in silence. The doctor watched people walking below on the streets. The neon lighting illuminated the entertainment district. It was hard to tell whether there had ever been a war here, or that there were places in the world, like his home, which would never see a life like this again. She's got no reason to feel anything for him, Brandon finally said, pulling Dellen's attention back to his old friend. The old medic looked to the sky and crossed his arms. She doesn't, or you don't. Neither she nor I owe him our lives. A few gifts and well-wishing messages don't change the last 10 years. They don't change what he did to us. No, I suppose not, Dellen said. That man was my best friend, and I still find it hard to wrap my head around what he became. All his plans within plans, Dell. How long had he been manipulating us? Was it because he failed, because we failed? Or was it even before that? Brandon asked. Those questions I don't know the answer to. I don't think Jack knows. In our time, we were invincible. To lose to John Morrison when we gave it all we had, that might have tripped something in him. Or maybe it was the loss of Eric, Civics, my squad. This time around, he wanted the ends to justify the means. 10 years, Dell, Brandon repeated. 10 years. I'll know it, kid. The old doctor stood up and rested a hand on the sniper's shoulder. But we all have our time. We all do what we need to do. You, me, and everyone else here. Remember that. Dellen disappeared back into the building, leaving Brandon alone on the roof. The sniper had hoped he would stay, but he gave his old friend no reason to. If anything, he was brilliant at pushing away those that cared for his well-being. He liked to pretend that made him stronger, that he had all the answers, that he didn't need help. It reminded him of Jack and the old man's letter. Try to forget about me. Brandon was 40, and they were still calling him a kid, even though they were only 7 years older than he was. The sun setting behind the clouds gave off an orange hue in the pre-night sky. He took a last huff from his cigar, then bit off the end before tossing it over the roof. He had made his decision about Nyala. Now, he just needed to stand by it. After 2 days of studying notes, Mikhail decided to make his way back downstairs. He found bars to be interesting places. Curiosity had remained with him despite his transformation. The bright lights of varying colors, the way they reflected off the man-made fog that covered the neon dance floor, the variations of patrons who looked like they came from all levels of society. He took it all in. This was not a place, but a living, breathing entity made up of the people who inhabited it. The club would be a different place if not for the people, he decided. Can I get you a drink, huh? The barmaid said in a high voice, cutting through the music's bass. The shadow looked behind her at the bottles that lined the shelves, some full, some empty, those with and without labels. Mikhail pointed to an oblong-shaped bottle which held a blue liquid. The barmaid gave him a smile and turned her back to retrieve it for him. Mikhail went back to his observations when he noticed several of the patrons standing near him were intently staring at him with hostile expressions. He could not understand why. Come down to Diamond to laugh at the wildlife, asshole? One of the patrons said. Now he understood as he looked at their mottled garb compared to his clean white suit. I am not from here. I would ask you to leave me alone and enjoy your drink. For one of the few times in his life, he had failed to blend in with his surroundings. Maybe I've already enjoyed my drink, the man replied, raising his voice. Maybe I want it so you can't enjoy yours. For a moment, the shadow pondered what Alexander would do in this situation, then gave the drunk a smile and shifted his vision so the gold in his eyes shuddered around his white pupil. The drunk didn't seem afraid, though his friends were taken aback. Neat trick you learned there. Who taught you that, dickhead? Mikhail reached into his jacket and pulled out his blood-encrusted survival knife, spinning it on the palm of his hand. The same man I took this from, he said with an edge in his voice. The drunk stared at the blade intently, then looked up at Mikhail. Whoa, hey man. The drunk backed up into the thickness of the crowd, all the while keeping his hands up until Mikhail lost him in the group. The shadow placed the blade back in his jacket and turned back towards the bar. The barmaid was waiting with his drink. Those men weren't giving you any trouble, were they, sweetie? She asked. They could not. Place this on Captain Newsom's tab, Mikhail replied. Of course, hon. A few minutes went by. Mikhail continued to take in the surroundings, the curves of the barmaid as she moved around, pouring shots into glass, shaking drinks with ice, and occasionally flashing him a soft smile. The shadow looked at the blue of his drink, never once sipping it, but admiring the color as he spun the glass between his thumb and middle finger. Making new friends? Alex asked as he moved beside Mikhail. Not by definition, Alexander. A joke, Mikhail, it was a joke. Alex looked at the blue drink in the shadow's hand. The hell is that? It is... Mikhail lifted it to his lips and tasted it. It is blue and refreshing. The younger man shook his head and turned to the barmaid. Beer, cold and bottled, first thing you can grab. The barmaid bent down and placed an open brown bottle on the table and gave him a wink. Alex gave her a nod and began to sip at it. Just don't have too many of those. We're going to need you when the paint is done. That will not be an issue. I can keep my blood alcohol levels monitored with the database. Is there anything that computer can't do? Alex asked. It cannot give me an exact replication of my previous personality, the shadow replied. Alex wondered if Mikhail was being purposefully passive-aggressive, a smart-ass, or if that was just the computer's way of being blunt. The man only changed tones when it served a purpose, never socially. He was impossible to read. That's life. Just when we have everything everyone else wants, we find out we need more, Alex stated. I would presume that definition suits both of us, the shadow replied. Alex set his bottle down on the bar while Mikhail finished his drink. What do you mean? From what I have read about the old world, many were content to be self-sufficient, be in love, and to be able to live peaceful lives. If applied to our modern standard, self-sufficiency, love, the ability to defend oneself from the threats of this new world, you fit this category. Yet you seek more, Mikhail explained. I'd argue that it's out of necessity rather than want. Morrison is fighting to take those goals away from people like me, and he'll just keep on killing until he's won. Someone's gotta stop him, Alex replied. But why you and not another? Mikhail asked. Alex had to think about that, and then thoughts of Jack came rushing into his head. I wasn't the first. I was just in the right place at the right time when the old man found me. I couldn't let that chance pass me by. There were blares in the music as the song changed. The haze was colored a dark orange now. Neither man spoke as they watched the people on the dance floor enjoy themselves. Whatever tax Jack paid to keep Morrison from tearing this place down must have been large, Mikhail commented. Alex was too busy taking in the lights when he realized the other patrons at the bar had moved away. He and Mikhail were now surrounded by 6 men with crowbars and makeshift steel bats made from collapsed building parts. Shouldn't have threatened us like that, big shot. That little blade won't protect you now. You should walk away, Alex said as he reached back for his beer. And you are? Is this rich bastard your sugar daddy? Alex sipped his beer with one hand and pulled out Elias's pistol from his combat jacket with the other. It gleamed orange through its obscured dark coloring. The men were again taken aback. 2 dropped their weapons and ran for the exit. Alex tilted his head to the ringleader. I catch you in here again, I'm going to use this. Now fuck off. The 4 remaining men took off, bringing their weapons with them. As Alex placed the gun in his jacket, the bar began to fill up again. If they only knew, Alex said with a smile. I imagined they would not return. They've got no idea how many people you've skinned alive, that's all. A fair point. Grain? Nyala asked, shaking her head at the Hellchopper's fresh look. You're painting it green? It was either that or a glowing fuchsia. We're living in a fucking nightclub. What'd you expect? Tommy replied as he went back to spraying the Hellchopper. I expected you not to be drinking while painting, for one. Why aren't you using a mask? Nyala asked. You tried painting a Hellchopper for 2 days in a closed garage without getting bored. I would have if I knew you were going to paint it green, Nyala yelled. The almost neon green stuck out amongst the gray of the garage. In the sunlight, it wouldn't be any better. Could you at least make it look darker? She asked, reaching for one of the beers in his bucket of ice. Tommy put down the paint gun and sat on the garage's concrete. I could take granulated ash or dust and mix it with the paint to give it a darker look, but it's going to take the rest of the night. Will you? Nyala pressed. After a break, and maybe if you let me ask you a question or two, Tommy said. Fine, she replied, slamming the rest of her beer and throwing the bottle over her shoulder. Why Siren? He asked. What? The name on your tags. Why did Jack name you that? Siren. Do you know what a siren is, Tommy? Nyala asked. Only when they're coming after me. I don't imagine he named you that because you're loud and annoying. She reached for another one of his beers. Oh, now I can see why he picked Grace for you. You were saying? Tommy said to further on their conversation. In old world myth, there were beautiful songstresses who lured sailors to their islands. Their bodies and tunes were said to be so enamoring that men would purposefully shipwreck and attempt to make for the Sirens' coast. What happened when they made it there? The Sirens would play their music for the sailors and promise them everything they ever wanted. Feed them, sleep with them, and finally, while the sailor slept, Tommy found himself more enthused as she spoke. The siren would kill him and later eat him. She finished flatly and started to stand. So do yourself a favor and stop staring at my tits before you end up like one of them. Tommy's enthusiasm broke in that single moment. He sighed. Tell Alex to send down more beer. Go tell him yourself. I'm going to bed. Tommy watched Nyala's hips move all the way out the door. Should have called her bitch instead, he said under his breath before clicking the comm. Alex, gonna need some more beers. Oh, you know that black shit from the fires? I'd use a bucket of that if anyone isn't too preoccupied by drinking. It's for the paint. Are you sure you don't want me to go with you? Layla asked as she watched Alex fill his bandolier with several rifle clips. This isn't a place anyone should have to see. Morrison left it a graveyard, and it's likely stayed that way, Alex explained. You can't just go alone. There's a chance he left soldiers to patrol it, she protested. Do you really believe anyone would willingly stay there, after all I told you? Layla shook her head. Tommy needs paint for the bird, and I know exactly where to get it, Alex said. I just don't understand why you think you have to go alone, Layla replied. Yeah, and I want it to stay that way. It'll only be a few hours. You're in charge until I get back, okay? She nodded and rose to kiss him on the cheek. Just be safe. As Alex made way down the stairs to the rear entrance, he ran into Janet, who was puffing on a Ghana cigarette. Where are you off to? She asked, exhaling a plume of smoke. A part of hell that isn't on fire anymore. Tommy needs something to turn his paint black. So you're just going to go out alone? At night? Janet pressed. That's the plan, yeah? Alex said. Then I'm going with you. No, you're not. There's some shit no one should be exposed to. Besides, it'll give you nightmares. I've already got those, she replied, offering her cigarette to Alex, who refused. You can't tell me no like a girl upstairs, Alex. You want to stop me from following you? Then shoot me. Alex paused for a moment, like he was considering it. Fine. Grab your gear and meet me behind the garage. Maybe after this, you'll understand Eli, and me, a little better. John Morrison had spent the last 2 days making phone calls and emptying his liquor glass before he found himself back on the elevator to floor 46. He had given the surly old man plenty of time to rest. Now he would get the answers he was looking for. Then he could finally put Jack Newsom in the dirt for his crimes. He could feel the inertia of the elevator slow beneath his feet. When the door opened, he took several careful steps. He didn't want his guardsmen to see him stumbling or believe him inebriated. They both gave him a quick salute as he went past them and into the torture room. Newsom was asleep in his metal chair, the wiring to his jaw quite visible on the exterior of his face. The doctor was sleeping in a cot, but Morrison woke both men with the loud thump of his foot on the ground. "Doctor, please make it so our honored guest can speak," Morrison ordered. "Sir, with respect, if I undo the wiring, there's a certainty he'll—" "Now, doctor," Morrison yelled, pulling a gun out from the pocket of his slacks. Though it was muffled, the old man forced a laugh. Morrison glared at him as he waited for the doctor to finish his work. When it was done, Morrison lifted his pistol and fired it into the doctor's head. Jack stopped laughing. One of the Marines peeked in the door, then immediately closed it. "You're a real monster, John," Jack groaned. His voice mumbled from his broken jaw. "I wouldn't have to be if people just listened the first time." Morrison spun the pistol around one of his fingers. "Now, 2 major patrols of mine were hit today. You're going to tell me why, and then you're going to tell me what they're planning." "Fuck you," Jack replied, through the pain of each forced word. Morrison responded by firing at one of Jack's shins. The old man screamed out in pain, while Morrison grabbed a chair. "That was a grazing shot, Newsom. I'm sure you've had many of those over the course of your career. If you have, you'll know a soldier could survive at least a dozen before he bleeds out. Now, every time you don't tell me what I want to hear, I'm going to graze you. I'll start with your legs, then your feet, and then I'll move upwards. Do you understand?" "Sorry, I'm a little deaf in my right ear," Jack spat. Morrison lifted his pistol again and fired at the old man's ear, tearing off part of the top with another graze. "I hope the other one isn't as bad," Morrison said with a smile. "Fuck! All right." John Morrison turned his chair around and leaned on its back. "You want to know what they're planning? I'll fucking tell you," the old man said. "I'm glad to have your attention," Morrison replied. "Your father was a brilliant man. Well, the one mistake he made was building that reactor so close to the main city." Morrison went from being smug to in shock. "Nobody knows where he put the Cloudbreaker reactor. That knowledge has been protected since—" "Not well enough. Your garrison in Queens didn't fool me back when I first signed up. There's no reason to have that many troops stationed in the most dead-ended part of the city. Tell the tower folk what you want, but I know where you've been hiding it, and so does my team." Morrison fought to not stammer. "Why hit patrols in Manhattan, then?" "Ain't it obvious? They're trying to throw you off. You'll be expecting an attack on yourself like I tried to pull. They'll make you wall up around your tower, then they'll bring the whole fucking city down, all to get you." Morrison was angered even more by each word Jack spoke. He wanted to end the man's life now, but he wondered what more the man knew. "When will they strike?" Morrison asked. "Hell if I know, but I'll bet it won't be much longer. They want you deader than I do, you suited fuck." Morrison shot Jack in his other shin. This time it was not a graze. "You are truly fortunate you gave me this information, Captain. So much that instead of killing you, I'm going to let your wounds end your wretched life," Morrison said with venom. He fired again at one of the old man's kneecaps before he stood. "Have a wonderful evening." Alex never thought he'd find himself outside of Yankee Stadium again. He was hesitant to make for the entrance. The char on the outside mesmerized him. Janet was alert, watching the high rises and walls, but saw how he just stared at the stadium, his rifle lowered at his side. "Hey, you all right?" she asked. Alex was looking for his own answer in the carbon scarring. There was bound to be nothing but the burnt-out husks of refugees inside. Only now did he realize the mistake he had made in coming back. "Alex?" Janet repeated. "What?" he said as he turned his head. "Are you okay?" "Fine," he replied harshly. "Let's go." The broken metal was the first thing he remembered. The overhang had slammed to the floor when he and Eli attempted their escape. "I doubt this is stable. Part of it is still on the upper level," Alex noted. "Good memory?" Janet asked. "We almost got crushed," he replied, working his way around the metal. "There's nothing to salvage here. We're going to have to go deeper into the building." Janet gave him a nod and followed him around the blackened maze. It wasn't long before they came across their first body, decomposed but mostly charred. "Christ, I hate being right," Alex said under his breath. "Leave these alone. We'll find plenty of char and ash on the stadium seats." The bodies grew more numerous, just as Alex had expected. The scent of the dead, combined with the dust kicked up by disturbing the resting place, stung his nostrils. Every few moments he felt the urge to blow his nose. The carbon on the old bodies preserved them in an odd sort of way. It was just as bad as the day Morrison had his men light the stadium on fire. Alex fought the gurgling in his stomach. Janet wasn't as lucky. For as strong as she was, Alex knew she wasn't impervious to this sickening place. A few meters in, they had to stop while she kneeled and puked. "I don't understand," Janet said, gasping for fresh air, stained by the stench of the dead. "You don't, or you don't want to?" Alex asked. Janet chucked again. Alex regretted asking. This was his hell to deal with, not hers. He let her catch her breath while examining their surroundings. Ruins of old vendors, places people would go to grab a bite before watching the game. Alex thought of the irony. He had no idea how the game of baseball was played, yet he could think back to his father listening to games on the radio as he tuned his aircraft. When he found an opening, unobscured by the ruinous metal that had crashed during the burning, it revealed the field. Everything was fried, though Alex was unsure if most of the blackness was bodies or burned grass and other material. It mattered little. He shifted his attention to the burned chairs, peeling away the blackness for Tommy's paint. "Is this why you hate him so much?" Janet asked as she finally pulled herself out of Yankee's forsaken halls. Alex stopped reaching for the chairs and picked out one that looked sturdy, and then sat down. "It's when I knew I'd spend the rest of my life making Morrison's a living hell. I never thought it would get this far, though. I've seen shot-up buildings, tanks rolling over families, people jumping to their deaths from 20 stories or higher. All that pales in comparison to what happened here. Blood Boil was the worst of it all." "Eli told me how you two escaped," Janet said. "Not our proudest moment. But after it happened, it made me feel weak. We had been trapped in like everyone else so easily. Then I thought about how impossible it was to live through it. It made me realize how strong the both of us were. If we could survive this, then we could survive anything. That's when we started hitting patrols at night. We were only 17, Alex explained. He looked up for a time, staring at the stars shining in the midnight sky. Janet could tell he no longer wanted to speak. Alex was trying to escape this place by going to another world. She understood how that felt. She had done it many times before. As Janet went to work gathering char, Alex left his fantasy world and started to help. Neither of them said another word until they were long away from that place. It had taken him another day, but Tommy finished the new paint job, managed to clean the registry, and sweep for any tracking bugs on the hell chopper. The new color wasn't beautiful, but it looked a hell of a lot better than the neon green he had painted 2 days before. The bird was a charcoal gray and coated with the ash of a graveyard, or so he had been told. Fitting. The ruins created by a tyrant might lead to the same man's demise. Tommy had his doubts, but at least the start was poetic. After an hour of reveling in his work and catching a few hours of sleep in one of the bunks inside the bird, he got a hold of Nayala on the comm. "It's done and ready when you are." There was a simple click for a reply. Tommy took the cue and headed upstairs. He was ready for a full day's sleep. Everyone was gathered at the table when Tommy stumbled into his room. "This is the best I could do, given the circumstances," Tyler said, setting down knee-pad-sized patches that looked like oversized stickers. "Same concept as the sticker, but these are set to 2 different detonators, one for the foundation and one for the elevators." "And you're sure there'll be enough?" Alex asked with uncertainty. "By the numbers, yeah, but I've never used C4 in a sticker. This is convenience over quality." "We have little choice," Mikhail said. "Hauling larger explosives could lead to either myself or Ranger Hargraven being compromised." Alex still looked uneasy, but gave both men a nod. "That settles that, then. We'll leave at the same time. Hopefully, by the time you're inside, the explosion at the fueling center will have the tower in disarray." Alex looked over at Nayala. "We'll be in and out as soon as we can," she assured him. "All right. We move out in an hour. Questions?" There were none. Alex was the first to get up and made for his bunk, with Layla close behind. "Janet told me she went with you," Layla said, moving to sit beside him on the bed. Alex hung his head. She wanted to understand Elias better. There's no saying no to her unless it's at gunpoint. "I'm not blaming you. I only wanted to go if you needed me." "I'm glad you didn't. Not because I didn't want you with me, but going back there, seeing that destruction, was hard enough. Living through it? Oh, that was something else," Alex explained. "How did she do?" Layla asked. "Puked her guts out. Surprised I didn't. It's all burnt up, but no one's touched it until yesterday. Yankees an oversized mausoleum now." Layla winced. She didn't want the image of that place in her head. "Let's not think about it anymore." "Yeah, let's not," Alex replied. An hour came and went, and Alex found himself loading weapons and his team into one of Tommy's BMWs again. They might have been gifts from Jack, but Tommy didn't seem to mind sparing them for their cause. There were other rewards to be had when Morrison was brought down. Nayala was already putting the Hell Chopper through its pre-flight checks. If their mission was timed perfectly, she would arrive right as Alex's team would have their explosives set up. Nayala had thought about what Alex said. It was entirely possible that she wouldn't be making it out of the tower alive. Brandon certainly didn't believe she would, but she had put him and the negative thoughts behind. As much as she wanted to hate the old man, she was still irrevocably drawn to him. Her main worry, though, was Mikhail, whom she had hardly spoken to since being rescued by the Crusaders. Nayala decided now would be as good a time as any while they loaded explosives onto the chopper. "Russian, a word." Mikhail ignored the slant. "Yes." "How do you gauge your chances of survival?" she asked. "Are you asking for hard numbers or an assessment?" the Shadow replied. "I prefer an assessment," Nayala replied. "If your intentions are to free Captain Newsome, there is little chance you will succeed." "And you?" "Gods rarely find themselves in the dark spaces I cling to." "Do you know how to fly a bird?" "Yes." "Good," she replied, going back to loading the bird. She wouldn't betray her feelings to Mikhail, but she didn't want to see him dead either because of her decisions. No more words were said when Alex pulled the BMW out of the base. Everyone knew their jobs. Now was a matter of execution. Tyler and Dellen were mumbling something to each other in the back seats, but Alex was focused on the drive and trying not to hit the debris in the road. The riots were changing the inner city that had once been policed to a deathly empty state. Now there were burnt-out husks of marine transport vehicles and bodies of the rich, poor, and soldiers every few blocks. Morrison's grip on the city was becoming looser each day. What was stranger still was that the number of his Marines on patrol seemed light since their first attacks. Alex thought that the man might have been luring people closer to his tower. Clever bastard did it at the stadium. Why not now? Alex heard rumors of soldiers moving eastward, almost as if Morrison was more concerned about expanding and rebuilding what used to be Queens. He knew better than to trust words in a bar from rioters, though. "Have you ever seen his tower up close, Alex?" Dellen asked, leaning towards the middle console. "Just from the chopper. We'll get a decent peek from Bryant Park, though," Alex replied. "What is it with that guy and building shit in old parks?" Tyler asked, lighting up a Ghana cigarette. "It's easier to build new garrisons on flatland rather than tearing down an old building," Layla answered. "That and his soldiers are part of his construction workforce. Can't protect your city if you're too busy tearing it down and building it back up." "Fair enough," Tyler replied. "So this'll be the closest you've ever been to his harem on foot?" Dallin continued to question. "Probably the closest anyone on the outside's ever been, apart from the old man, Nanayala," Alex replied. "She always liked putting her nose in the dirt. Fucking Rue. I hope she comes out on the other side." Layla turned in her seat and raised an eyebrow at him. "I can't believe you called her that," she said. "I've known her for a long time, Layla. Besides, she is what she bloody well is. Not that it matters anymore. Our home's a pile of rubble, and they're going to have an empire. Funny how that worked out for the shackle draggers." "Enough," Tyler said as he ashed the cigarette on the window. "We're drawing near the station." Alex pulled into a rundown car park a block away from the station. Everyone piled out and readied their weapons, loading clips while Tyler made sure his pack was secure. "Best keep me damn well covered, Brits. I'd hate a stray bullet to blow us all to hell." Yeah, Dellen muttered under his breath. His white coat and lack of a bandolier made him look out of place on a battlefield, but Tyler wouldn't trust any other medic by his side. Alex knew this too after their first encounter back in London. Dellen knew how to disarm hidden threats no one else could see. That skill and attention to detail served him well as a doctor, and even more so in combat. If they found themselves in a tight spot, the doctor always seemed to have a way out they'd never considered. All those years of living out in a dead zone only honed his skills. "I can see guards at the checkpoint," Layla said, looking out from the edge of the car park. "Quick and quiet is going to be impossible." "Oh, I don't know about that," Tyler replied, reaching into his bag. After a moment of digging, he pulled out a flare and popped the top. The guards below caught it almost immediately and made a few signals. "What are you doing?" Layla hollered. Tyler tossed the flare over the side of the wall. "Just wait." Several minutes passed by when a Marine Jeep rolled out from the fueling station, making its way right for them. Alex caught Tyler's plan, even if it was too bold. "Find some cover," Alex said. The team waited from different cross points as the Jeep rolled through the entrance. When the Marines exited from their vehicle, they made way for the BMW, but found themselves caught out in the open as the team hailed bullets upon them. With the 4 soldiers felled, the team piled into the Jeep and made way for the main gate. Alex had thrown on the helmet of a fallen soldier to disguise himself from afar. They rolled up at the same pace the Jeep had left. Alex pulled the Jeep in as the gate opened, and then stopped hard in the middle of the 4 gate guards. The team sprayed them with bullets from inside the Jeep, then began moving forward again, deeper into the station. Their presence had not yet been alerted. Alex figured they had at least 2 or 3 minutes to get their bearings. He pulled the Jeep around back of one of the old construction offices, hoping to avoid suspicion. "The fueling station is just across the way there," Tyler stated. "Looks like there are several vehicles for our trap." He jumped out of the Jeep and began rigging the waiting vehicles, all the while on the lookout for any patrols. The rest watched him from the Jeep as he worked. "It still surprises me that Morrison was never able to come up with a better idea than small reactors that branch off the main," Dallin said to no one in particular. "I suppose he never assumed anyone would be crazy enough to destabilize one." Alex turned around in his seat. "What's that mean, Dell?" "It means we're about to leave one hell of a crater. Maybe not as big as the tower, but they'll see the explosion from miles," Dan answered. "Isn't that the idea?" Layla asked. "Of course, but if we're going to inherit this infrastructure, it makes me wonder what other shortcuts Morrison took. Those problems will become ours, and I'm not keen on burying them where we can't see them and hoping for the best." "What is it with you and sewers, you old bastard?" Dellen replied. "It's time we got down there. Anyone know how?" Alex pressed. "Ahem." Layla coughed. She was standing over a manhole cover, just beside the Jeep. Follow me, boys. I'll bend down one or two of these. Nyala could feel her palms getting sweaty as she approached Morrison's tower. She must have double-checked her identifier encoding 2 or 3 times before actually transmitting it to the tower's air control. Though Mikhail was seated behind her, she'd almost forgotten he was there. The duo had not spoken since being in the garage. She felt silly being so nervous. There was a chance the Rangers could have alerted Morrison of her role, but that would only hurt their political standing. She had already been burned. A political incident wasn't worth giving her up. She didn't stop worrying until a message came back across her screen. Access approved. Welcome back, Advisor Patterson. Nyala felt relieved, then shot a glance back at the shadow. Are you ready? Affirmative, he replied. Once I get the cameras down, I'll give you a click. No doubt soldiers will be sent to inspect the craft, she said. They will inspect nothing. Good. Bring her in. They won't expect me to be piloting this damn thing. Mikhail took Nyala's place at the helm without as much as a second glance. She made way towards the ramp, her nerves calm but the feeling of excitement still running down her spine. John Morrison had trouble believing what he was seeing on the roof camera of his computer screen. After several months of disappearing, his advisor had finally returned, though this time he knew her identity. Silly bitch, he said to himself. She had evaded his capture in Jerusalem, but had made the foolish decision of tempting fate again. He had often admired her beauty, and even found himself jealous when his son had taken to sleeping with her. Jealous, and in the slightest sense, proud. Those feelings devolved into anger as he watched her enter the tower. His tower, like she had simply left behind a bag. She likely still had her diamond pass and could move virtually anywhere. But why be so brazen as to come alone? Morrison punched up the command line for Gaddis when his computer screen went dark, followed by the live feed cameras. Without a second thought, he grabbed his pistol from the desk and raced for the nearest security outpost on his floor. Nyala put 2 bullets into the main camera hub and wireless network, and then gave Mikhail the signal. She hoped he'd already be in the building architecture before someone brought the cameras back online. Now that her debt to the Crusaders was over, she could focus on finding the old man. She poured through the handwritten security reports until she found one labeled Prisoner Detail, 46. Nyala crumpled the paper and made for the exit, leaving the bodies of several security employees dead on the floor. If Morrison himself hadn't noticed the cameras going out, someone else would. She raced down the hall and into one of the 4 sets of elevators. There was a brief feeling that she might make it through successfully. That moment fled when, just as her elevator began its descent, there was a thud on the roof. One of the vents above caved in. She raised her pistol and aimed up at the empty space, where she was met with another pistol. Siren, Mikhail said, pulling his pistol back as he peeked through the vent. Good luck. Nyala, nearly frozen with fear, wanted to scream. Instead, she dropped her pistol to her side and silently cursed. She'd forgotten where he was supposed to place the explosives. At least there's none of those rovers down here, Tyler said as the team carried on through the darkened tunnels. Everyone ignored him as lighting began to appear overhead. Oh, by the way, Tyler said as he clicked the button on his detonator. A harsh rumbling that nearly took them all off their feet followed before stabilizing a moment later. We should be expecting reinforcements, Tyler finished. I bet they have patrols down here, Layla added. No doubt they felt that. We should be ready. She wasn't wrong. They approached a pair of Marines overlooking the sewage running through pipelines from a turn on their catwalk. Layla motioned for Dellin to move up with her. They crept forward behind the guardsman. Layla brought one to his knees with a swift kick to the calf, then snapped his neck with a hard tug left. Dellin had produced a syringe and injected it into the other Marine's neck, and then pushed him over the railing and into the sludge. Alex and Tyler moved up, and the team followed the tunnel's new direction. The light was getting much brighter now, almost blinding by the time they stumbled into the reactor room. There were no Marines, just men in lab coats with dark welding masks on. Tyler decided he had enough of the light. Mask, now, he yelled, getting out of the glare of the reactor. The scientist did as he was told, but Tyler's rifle was still raised like he was going to murder the man. The other scientists had already scattered into the tunnels. Easy, Ruin, Alex said, placing his hand on top of Tyler's rifle. No non-combatants. Morrison doesn't play by those rules. Why should we? The taller man replied. Because we're better than Morrison, Alex stated, turning to look at the squinting scientists. Get the fuck out of here. Tyler lowered his rifle and put on the mask, while the pudgy scientist scurried away into the darkness. He didn't bother to say anything more, instead opting to set his explosives. Even with the mask on, the translucent reactor still hurt his eyes. He tried to focus on wiring his bomb, while the others checked for other exits. One way in, one way out, Dallin yelled. They were at a disadvantage if reinforcements hit, but the reactor's light worked both ways. Alex and Layla put their backs into the walling at the entrance as the first group of Marines fought their way down the hall. Each took turns firing at the blind soldiers, while the others reloaded. The Marine shots were wild, but Layla's were deadly accurate. Question, Alex yelled out. Yeah, Tyler yelled back. What happens if one of their stray shots hits the reactor? As the Marines kept up their vain advance, Layla sprayed another group with their SMG. More bullets flew her way but missed their mark and slammed into what sounded like glass. Oh shit, Tyler yelled out. Go, we've got to go. Tyler grabbed his pack and tossed the helmet, spraying Marines with his rifle. Alex spared a glance back, only to notice that the brightness was far worse than when they had arrived. The Marines ahead of them were either dead or blinded, and were covering their vision. The team rushed for the exit, doing their best to take out anyone in their way. Then all noise stopped, and there was a quick flash. Sound returned and boomed through their ears. Alex's ears were ringing. The tunnel was filled with white light. And then all his sensations went dark at once. Morrison had raced for an elevator after arriving at the security station. They managed to get the cameras back online and track the only other elevator running in the building. It was heading for floor 46. She's after Newsom. He reached down and tightened his belt as he waited to descend. They'll both die here. Together. A foolish rescue attempt. They must have thought they were invincible. Morrison would prove them wrong. His anger rose as the elevator dropped each level, one by one, into the lower reaches of his tower. Rarely did he ever go lower than the 50th, but in the case of people like Jack Newsom, he needed a floor like that. A place to hide buried bodies from New Purgatory's political system. He'd add 2 more before the day ended. Nayala could feel the elevator camera watching her. When she grabbed it and ripped it out of its socket, she couldn't help but wonder about how long it had been on her. She knew they could just rearm the system on a different floor, but this meant Morrison would have had to have a post on each floor. She hung her head. It was intel she could give quickly if she made it out. The elevator was slowing now. Nayala took up a position opposite of the controls and watched as bullets slammed past her and into the polished bronze sheet that designed the elevator's interior. When it stopped, she leaned out and fired 2 shots into the face of each Marine. Their bodies fell in front of the door that led to the man she loved. Without thinking, she rushed it, and almost stopped dead when she went through. There, beaten, bloodied, and nearly dead, sat Jack. His legs were dripping blood, and there was a solid stream coming down the side of his face. Some were crusted, some fresh. His jaw was out of place. The old man tried to fashion a smile with what remained of his horribly disfigured teeth. Yet even through all that, he still wasn't dead. His spirit unbroken. Sorry, Naya, he managed to get out. I hoped you wouldn't come. Nayala moved closer to him. No, my time is done, Jack. Just like yours. If I can't get you out, then I don't want to live. How very fucking touching. John Morrison stood in the doorway, his pistol raised. You didn't think this would actually work, did you? A soldier approached behind Morrison. Sir. Not now, Marine. Sir, we lost one of our stations. You can see the smoke from... Morrison turned and shot the man twice, giving Nayala a chance to lift her own pistol. She had him, but Morrison's arm swung back around in a blur and fired a single round that caught her in the chest. As she fell to the floor, she tried to breathe in, but her lungs cut her off. When blood rose from her throat and coated her lips, she realized this was the end. She turned her head to her lover. bound in his chair but fighting his restraints. It was her final sight before her world faded into darkness. Jack struggled in his chair as hard as he could against the sharpened metal welded around his wrists. It was no use, but his anger wouldn't let him stop. "I'll kill you. I'll fucking..." John Morrison put a stop to Jack Newsom's yelling. He put a stop to Jack Newsom's everything. John Morrison raised his pistol and fired a round that found Jack Newsom's skull, sending him and his chair flying backwards. The old soldier finally lay dead, too many years past his time, in a torture room beside a woman that had apparently loved him. Morrison didn't spare another glance as he made for the door. "Call for a cleanup crew," he said into one of the nearby intercoms. "Floor 46. Toss the bodies out a window." Mikhail listened through the comm while he set the explosives in the building's basement. They were all quite simple, but their prospective damage would be immense if they were placed correctly. The Shadow felt nothing as he heard Captain Newsom yell right before a single shot rang out. His mind told him that those with feelings would be shocked, even traumatized by such an action. He forced himself to listen, to be able to feel, but it did nothing for him. As the last explosive lay in place, Mikhail walked over to the elevator and punched up a button back to the roof and back to the hell chopper. He didn't bother moving back up into the crawl space. There was no reasoning to it. He had taken the camera and the shaft offline. He let his classical music slowly ring in his ears as the elevator rose. All the while, working through why Nayala would give her own life up so easily for a man who manipulated her so thoroughly. It occurred to him that perhaps there were parts of the world he would never understand. There was no logic in her sacrifice. He hated his captors. Why then could Nayala not hate Jack Newsom? The elevator stopped before it hit his floor. 98, Mikhail said to himself, reaching for his gun. He saw a man he had never laid eyes on before, another Marine. The Marine fired first, but the Shadow let his armor take the rounds. Mikhail fired a single round and walked out from the elevator as the soldier keeled over, pathetic and weak. The man was crying out in pain. It was then that Mikhail thought that emotion would never return to him, though his understanding of it had never left. This was part of the reason his captors must have found him so valuable. He had understood the worth of his skills, but only in how to execute them. Among men, he was a lion, designed to hide, yet perfected for combat. "A shame my people created beyond their power to control," he said quietly. The elevator resumed and quickly reached floor 100. There were men running around, but they looked like techs. They carried no weaponry, so Mikhail strode by them. They may have thought him to be just another soldier. Once he was inside the hell chopper, he found 2 more easily dispatched Marines, and then destroyed the tracker they were planning. He made way for the cockpit and launched the bird, all before the anti-air guns could warm up for a barrage. For the 3rd or 4th time in more than a month, Alex could taste dirt, or at least he hoped it was dirt. The light was back, still harsh. When he propped his head up, he saw that it was the sun. That made him realize he was exposed and back out in the open. The damn reactor must have taken out the road. He could smell smoke and forced himself up to look at the damage. Layla was beside him, still out and scuffed up. A thick piece of concrete was laying on her stomach. Alec couldn't see Tyler or Dellen, but then he looked at the surrounding debris. They could have been under any of it. "Good, you're up," Dellen said, sitting on a melted tire. "Tyler's over there. Blast took off a good part of his foot." "Bastards," Tyler yelled. "They shot their own damn reactor." "Can we move him?" Alex asked as he pulled Layla up from the ground. "Yeah, he'll be fine," Dellen replied. "Just get the damn car." Alex nodded and climbed the ruined road back to the car. The damage might as well have taken out the entire park. They were all lucky to be alive, let alone have all their limbs. But now he was worried about the Marines. If his team managed to survive, there were sure to be others amongst the soldiers that did too. Alex hurried for the BMW, hoping it was still intact. Tyler's injury was gruesome, despite what Dellen had said. though the old doc had probably seen worse. The first 3/4 of Tyler's boot and foot had been sheared off like they went through a precision cutter. Only Talia could have been more accurate. Dallin did his best to wrap it, but it was still bleeding profusely. To Tyler's credit, he had calmed down, had gotten a cigarette in his mouth and his flask in the other. "Thought you quit drinking, Ty," Alex teased, trying to make light of his friend's pain. "No self-respecting Irishman leaves his flask empty, dry or not," he replied, taking a slug between puffs. "If I told you that would make your bleeding worse," Dallin started, "I'd take another swig. Try faster, would you, Alex? I think it's starting to sting." Alex made the drive short by ignoring the ghost city that surrounded him. Any time he had been in a vehicle, it was hard to not look out at the desolation all around him. The desolation and reconstruction that turned old skyscrapers black and twisted. As they pulled into Alonso's garage, Alex couldn't believe the sight of the hell chopper. It was untouched, and he had no idea how that was possible. He assumed it had gone better than his own outing, but when he saw Mikhail sitting alone on the steps to the garage door, those thoughts changed. "Tyler looks well," the shadow said, deadpan. "Sarcasm isn't one of your talents." "Where's Nyala?" Alex asked. "Dead. Captain Newsome as well." Alex knew to expect the news, but it still hit him like a rock in the chest. In a matter of hours, he had almost gotten his team killed again, and now Nyala and the old man were decorating a floorboard somewhere. "Damn it. What about the explosives?" Alex pressed. "They are in place. If not for the ranger, the task would have been far more difficult, and made my escape possible. She was courageous in her last moments." Alex spit off to the side. "Yeah, and now she's dead. What a goddamn waste." Layla and Dallin hauled Tyler up the stairs. Mikhail stood, knowing no other words needed to be said, and made for the exit. In the moment, he had felt nothing. Yet now, after talking to Alex, he was distressed. He pondered if his cold logic could make the painful emotions feel worse, in himself and others. Alex found himself in the bar, ordering beer after beer. He was sitting in one of the darkened booths and hoped nobody would find him. 2 more deaths were on his head now. He regretted letting Nyala go, and hated how the small hope of her success had influenced him. Her effort had finished off Jack. Now it all came down to the tower. Their mission was starting to seem increasingly like a bad idea with each passing hour. If a veteran ranger couldn't fight her way out, who could? Alex's mind wandered for a while until Otto found his way to where he was hiding and took a seat opposite of him, a beer in each massive fist. "Not a good day, boss." "Good for us, bad for your old team." "Fucking shame," the convict replied. "I'll have Janet etch 2 more skulls on my arm. You can't take it to heart, kid. You'd have never stopped Nyala. She'd have gone anyway. For reasons I'll never understand, she loved that man." "It's a waste, Otto. She could have helped us. Jack sacrificed himself for her, and she goes and gets herself killed," Alex said with his head hung. "She was never here from the start, kid. One too many losses. Jack, Brandon, her heritage. She was looking for one solid thing to hold on to. It just happened to be Jack, and that's what did her in. Jack, on the other hand, he did what he did for a reason. I'm sure of it." Alex sipped at his beer. He wasn't so sure. From what he saw, a life of war had a way of eating a person alive from the inside and out. Alex wondered if maybe those last few days of being sober weren't to try and turn his life around, to try and prove something to him, but because Jack had finally given up. "How is Brandon?" Alex asked. "In better shape than you, kid." "That why you're down here, Otto? They were too afraid to send anyone else?" "No. I came down here to check on my friend, because I know he's just as human as the rest of us, no matter how hard he tries to emulate the old man." Alex cracked a smile, the first he had all day. "It's funny. I knew they weren't going to be successful, and I fooled myself into thinking there was a chance. When we rolled past the hell chopper, I believed it. Shows what I know. You got too much to worry about to be hung up on, Jack. Believe me, kid, they were already gone. 10 years past due. We've all lived long lives, put a lot of miles on our bodies and our hearts. There comes a point where it must stop, Otto explained. His words mirrored Alex's thoughts. I'll miss both of them, but we have to honor their sacrifice, Otto continued. He brought everyone in. Now that he's dead, I don't see why any of you would follow me, Alex replied. A waitress came over with another beer that Otto promptly snatched before Alex could reach it. We didn't need Jack around to know stopping Morrison was the right thing to do. He might have pulled us back in, but you made us believe we have a chance. You lead by example. Otto placed the beer between Alex and himself. That's what the old man couldn't do. Not now, and not 10 years ago. Alex looked down at the bottle, then looked up at the convict. He pushed his empties aside and stood up from the booth. Otto reached back for the beer and drained it as quickly as he had snatched it. Get yourself some sleep, kid. Everyone's waiting to see what's next. Ready and willing. Otto set his empty down and removed himself from the booth as well, and made his way for the front exit. Alex didn't wait to see if another waitress was coming by, but instead stumbled his way across the dance floor and towards the stairs at the rear of the club. He made it about halfway before his feet betrayed him. He fell but grabbed onto the railing, letting his body slowly lower to the steps. This is comfortable. He fought the spinning in his head and a queasy stomach, and then closed his eyes. The hum of the bass still echoed in his ears, though faint. It matched his deep breathing. Then it all faded out and into sleep. The news of his nearest refueling station being ripped apart only seemed to reinforce Newsom's theory. Morrison believed now more than ever that this was further proof of the coming attack on his main reactor. The lack of patrols inner city had likely tipped the mercenaries off that his soldiers were on the move, which meant their tactics for Morrison to reinforce his base were failing. Destroying the fueling station would only mean the few vehicles he hadn't sent to Queens would remain here, or at the very least until the Crusader threat was dealt with and his engineers could return to work. Morrison smiled as he looked down at his console. They had tipped their hand with a preview of their plans. Bryant Park was nothing more than an asphalt crater. The destruction was abundant for such a small reactor. It chilled his spine when he thought of what the Cloudbreaker reactor might do. Not just a new Purgatory, but what was left of the state. There was a small part of him that admired their plan, doomed as it was. Until now, he had never faced a group with such a morbid and destructive nature. There were always petty rioters or beggars who had found weaponry, but they were crushed so easily under the heel of his army. The Crusaders had been a worthy challenge, but one he had figured out. He decided he would remember their plan of attack for the other countries he would bring into the Cloudbreaker fold, especially if they would not fall in line with his own ideas. No one has ever tried to counter my ruthlessness with their own. It would make brilliant propaganda for those in the blue and orange quarters of his tower. Those in Diamond would know the truth, but either way the story would play out in his favor. Now there was only a matter of shoring up his defenses at home and in Queens. After all, there was no harm in being prepared for their assault. His security officer came through his door with a clipboard and numerous papers attached. Yes, Gaddis? Morrison asked, standing from his chair and moving towards his window. Reports are coming in from our allies around the globe, sir. An influx of foreign soldiers should be here tomorrow, both as your honor guard and for reactor defense. Who committed? Australia has offered a small platoon of rangers, mostly snipers and spotters. China sent 4 honor guardsmen who protect President Wu. According to the information they sent us, they're adept at close-quarters combat and carry hooked swords, Gaddis explained. Be sure to outfit them with our best weapons of their choice. Were you able to receive anything from Russia or Jerusalem? Jerusalem's still recovering from their losses after the dome was attacked, and Russia did not respond to your message. I will keep that in mind after this last battle is played out, Morrison said, turning his head slightly. There was one other bit of news. Go on. Your friend in Berlin is in a hell chopper with a group of specialist operatives. There's little information attached on them, though, apart from the disclaimer that they've never failed an op in the European Dead Zone. Oh? Thomas, you didn't, Morrison said under his breath. Sir? My friend has a group of augmented soldiers. Send them directly to me when they arrive. I'm interested in seeing his handiwork. Yes, sir. Alex remembered passing out on something hard. When he woke up, he was surprised to find himself back in his bed. He wasn't sure what time it was or who put him there, but he did know he had to get moving. Layla was nowhere to be found, so he grabbed a quick shower and dressed, then made his way to the desk. Everyone was already waiting, talking over cups of coffee and breakfast. He must have woken up an hour past them, as their plates were already clean, save for his own at the head of the table. Hey, look who's up, Tyler yelled, raising his mug. Alex moved to his seat and began digging into his plate while the team carried on their conversations. He enjoyed listening to all of them, to Tommy carry on about old tales, to listen to Talia preach while the others played her off, or Janet swatting down ideas in favor of her own. It wasn't the perfect mixture of personalities, but it was a group of talented specialists, a group that proved they could work together. Maybe the convict's right. Maybe we can pull this off. So what's the plan here, boss? Otto asked, slurping down a cup of coffee. The armory and the airstrip. We take those out, it's a straight shot to the tower. I've already got teams in mind. As long as you're not in them, Dallin said to the surprise of everyone at the table. Alex pushed his plate aside and glared over at the old combat medic, waiting for him to continue. With respect, Alex, you and Layla have been running yourselves ragged since we got back. You need some rest. This was the last thing Alex wanted to hear. He gave Layla a quick glance, but she didn't seem to disagree. Is that your professional opinion, Doc? Alex asked. That it is, Yank. Set up the teams, but let us carry it out. You've earned the goddamn rest. Alex shook his head. If he went against the doctor, then what would stop the rest of the team from doing the same shit? All right. Armory team will take a rig and bust them with explosives. They'll take whatever they find's useful and get the hell out. Airstrip team will infiltrate the terminal tower and create as much havoc as they can. It's a simple plan with a lot of chances to go wrong, but I have faith in all of you and your creativity. What is the rig? Ezra asked. We have to steal one, Otto answered. Not like we have one sitting around. That'll be the easy part, Janet said. Regardless of where Morrison's moved his soldiers, that armory is still going to be locked up tighter than Tommy's. Easy, Alex said as he cut her off. We're going to use our heavy hitters. You, Otto, Ezra, and Talia. Tommy gets the pleasure of driving the rig. From graveyard sports cars to marine pigs. Looking forward to it, Tommy replied. My assumption of being a part of the infiltration team was correct then, Mikhail asked. Yeah, you and Brandon can hit the terminal and screw with their landings, Alex explained. Might be a slight problem there, Alex, Brandon quipped. None of us know air traffic protocols. He has a point. Mikhail might be able to brazen through it, but if there's any encryption codes, Janet added. I know them, Ezra said as he crossed his arms. Alex gave him a glance. I suppose in your line of work it wouldn't be hard to get flight access to different cities. One of the many tools of my trade. If anything, it'll secure my loyalty to your mission. If your codes still work, Alex replied. Ezra gets added to the airstrip team. That leaves Armory team a man short. I volunteer. No rest for the dead, no rest for me, Tyler stated, waiting for Dellin to deny him. The old doc shrugged. It's your life, Mick. That it is, Tyler shot back. Armory team leaves as soon as possible to get a truck. Airstrip team should leave soon as well, though you might have to stake out the tower for a little while, Alex interrupted. Why is that? Ezra asked. Alex smiled and looked over at Mikhail. The shadow nodded back over at his friend. We will be doing our damage with a plane. Alex saw both teams off as they left the garage in the remaining BMWs that hadn't yet been riddled with bullets. Layla stood beside him, but she seemed distracted. Only when he turned his body did he notice she was looking at him. "How's your head?" she asked, following up the stairs towards the club. "I'm not sure how I was able to sit up for the briefing. Who cooked?" "Tyler. Looks like he picked up a few pointers from the old man," Layla replied. "Remind me to thank him." Alonso's day employees were busy cleaning the club. Usually it was open 24/7, but there were times they would close for a few hours to wax the floors, restock, water down the booze, and change the playlists of music. Instead of heading up to the rooms, Alex pulled up a seat at one of the clean booths. "What are you thinking right now?" Layla asked, stretching in her seat. "I'm wishing I could be going with one of the teams. I don't like letting them loose without any direction." "Dylan and Mikhail have more experience than the two of us put together. Don't forget about Otto either. They'll be fine." I know. But if something were to happen," Alex started. "You'd feel responsible, like Jack and Naya," she cut him off. "Eli, too," Alex added. "I've read your journal. You were confident you knew what the outcome would be." "Yeah, but that was before I started losing my friends' lives. I figured it would be certain death for me. I never took those around me into account. I guess it's easier to do that when you've never experienced war. We've killed a lot of people, now and before this all started. We never lost many of our own, though. It was bound to change." "You know what I think," she said, putting her elbows down on the table. "What's that?" he replied. "That all of this is what our team signed on for. Even me. You ever think about the day you found me?" she asked. "I had a dream about it damn near a month ago. You rushed a Marine with a gun so you could beat him until you were pounding in his skull. No fear, no hesitation. Fully confident you'd get to him before he could kill you. Although," she said, starting to smile, "your hands were shaking a bit after that." Alex returned the smile. "That was because of you." "Uh-huh," Layla said as she reached across the table and grasped her hands around one of his balled fists. "They're not doing that now." "Always quick to prove me wrong," he replied. "I like lighting your fire." She lifted his fist and placed a kiss between his knuckles. One of the day workers moved over to the booth. "We'll be opening in another 20 minutes, Alex," the worker said. "Thanks, Sal. I owe you a beer," Alex replied. "You owe her one. She's the one who carried you back up." The day worker went back to cleaning the floor. Alex had a smile back. "Did you really?" Alex asked, looking back over at Layla. "Someone had to. Besides, you were puking all over the stairs," Layla said. "Thanks," Alex replied. She kissed his bruised knuckles again. "So are we staying down here, going up?" "I think I owe you a dance or two." Layla shook her head. "Do you ever relax? Stop acting like you're going to turn this down." The main lights darkened a bit early, and the multicolored lights began their flashing. When the music started, Alex took Layla by the hand and led her over to the dance floor. For the 5 minutes before actual patrons came into the club, they danced close to the blaring electric music. It was a short connection of their bodies touching, feeling each other's breath on their necks and faces, dancing in a way that was unrelated to the heavy beats and thumping bass that pounded in their chests. It was perfect, fleeting, with both hoping the few moments would never end.